Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shockwave48 here. Welcome back to another video. And today we got ourselves a new chapter of My Hero Academia 405. It looks like Bakugo is getting new power up in this little fight against All For One. And apparently at this time that he's surpassing All For One. I don't know how, but let's find out for sure if he did. So without further ado, guys, let's jump right into this chapter, guys. I've been waiting for so long for this. Let's see what's going on here.
Pineapple, you already know that we're back for My Hero Academia chapter spoilers, so we're back for chapter 405. I want to say thank you to Rukasu, Dabi's pole dance, and everyone that took part in getting the spoilers out, and let's get right into it. So this chapter of My Hero Academia is titled Chapter 405 Final Boss, and we're going to get some great Bakugo action as far as what we see in this chapter, but in the very beginning, we see a little bit of everyone with the cover page of the chapter actually being reaction shots, with everyone reacting to what happened last chapter, so that means All Might looks stunned. He looks stunned. All For One looks really angry as he turns towards Bakugo and All Might, but we'll get a little more into that in a second. And of course, Deku looks really shocked as he looks on towards Bakugo, who's holding All Might in his arms, as we now pick back up on this chapter. Now, according to Rukasu, the chapter begins with All Might and Night Eye in a white background, and Night Eye confirms that this was supposed to be the gruesome death that he first saw, and it's the end of All Might's dream. And on the page, we do see All Might sort of floating in a white mysterious void, kind of like the place that characters in JJK go to after everything is said and done. But All Might is standing here in front of this, I guess, ghost of Night Eye. I'm not really sure what's going on here, but he's looking very confused as Night Eye confirms to him, like, yeah, look, this was the moment that I was warning you about all the way back then. But given that Night Eye doesn't have any direct connection to One For All other than just like being All Might's friend, I really don't understand how All Might is seeing him here, right? Maybe it's because All Might himself was on the brink of death, and for that short moment where we saw the vestige kind of going away and becoming the new vestige, maybe All Might actually did die there, but that doesn't really make sense when you look at the kind of injury that he got. Like, he was almost pulled apart by All For One, but he wasn't pulled apart, and it's not like Bakugo saving him put him back together or anything like that. So I really don't understand how it is that he's seeing Night Eye here, or how Night Eye is communicating with All Might in the afterlife, given that All Might himself isn't in the afterlife, and we actually see him very lucid in this chapter. But I mean, this is kind of like the shonen hero stuff that you expect to see, and I feel like if this happened in Demon Slayer, I really wouldn't give it any second thought. I mean, to a certain extent, it really doesn't make sense at all, but I feel like I'm just going to chalk this up to this being Japan and this being a theme that they like to have in their stories, because I've seen this repeated in a lot of other mangas. So ignore the fact that, yes, there is a Night Eye ghost here, as Rukasu says that Night Eye says that he managed to twist fate and keep his promise to Deku, but I'm not sure yet if that's an 100% accurate translation, because maybe he could be talking about Bakugo keeping Deku's promise. So I'm going to hold off a little there until I see the full translation, but what we get in the next page is a continuation of this conversation between Night Eye and All Might. All Might smiles and jokingly says that a mentor's role should be to die and let their disciples take care of the rest. And we see several moments that are flashing through All Might's brain, like the time that he bowed his head to Deku's mom, the time that Deku came to him crying when he found out that All Might is more or less dying, and the time that All Might told All For One in the prison cell that he would not die and not let All For One kill him. And as All Might is pretty much saying that my job as a hero was to die and pretty much leave everything to you guys in a capable place, Night Eye says, no, that's wrong, Toshinori Yagi, talking to All Might and using his actual name, and he says that that's just a comic book archetype, and heroes are people too. They don't die that easily. And comics being in the My Hero Academia world isn't something new. In fact, we know All Might was inspired by comic books just in the same way that All For One was inspired by comic books, but there's a certain level of it that goes a little too far, and that was something that was really important in Deku's character arc. He was heavily inspired by All Might, but he went a little too far with it, obviously. So All Might, in the very same way, went a little too far with the thing that he was trying to embody, and Night Eye here, or at least Night Eye's ghost, is reminding him, look, at the end of the day, even if you're a hero, you're a person too. From here, we see a number of explosions in the sky as Bakugo kind of figures out where he's gonna land as he's holding All Might, because of course he can't just hold him in the air forever. And as Bakugo and All Might land on top of a building, we start seeing more of the reactions from random people all over the world that are watching the stream that we started to see in the last couple chapters, with two kids that look like they might be brothers or some sort of twins commenting on Bakugo's explosion quirk, saying it's really awesome, and the Can't You See It boy, who was Endeavor's biggest fan, remembering that Bakugo was the boy that was kidnapped by the League, and other civilians even still recognizing Bakugo from the sports festival, as we see Tsukauchi on the page looking really confused at just how Bakugo is able to save All Might, but he looks stunned. He looks like he absolutely can't believe it, but he's definitely happy that it happened. Of course, the last reactions we see on the page are from Katsuma and Mahoro from My Hero Academia Movie 2 Heroes Rising, and they both shout out Bakugo even even though he can't hear it at all, as he stumbles in front of All Might and puts himself in between All Might and the villain All For One, and we see little explosions still going on all around Bakugo, as I think the pain starts to kind of settle in from everything that he went through earlier in the day. And I think this is the first really detailed good shot that we get of Bakugo up close, and he looks awful. I mean, he has burns all over his body, half of his suit isn't even on, and yeah, he is standing there in front of All Might, but it looks like he's barely standing there, right? Like he's not doing an impressive job of looking like someone that you can completely rely on, but there is smoke and all sorts of stuff around Bakugo making him look really cool. So All Might looks at him, realizing all of the damage that Bakugo has gone through, and he asks Bakugo if he's okay, with Bakugo going right back at you to All Might, because All Might himself doesn't look all that great either after his amazing fight with All For One in his Iron Might armor. It's at this point where Bakugo is starting to feel a little confident, looking forward at All For One flying in the sky, kind of hovering there, and as Bakugo starts to speak, he coughs up a whole lot of blood, but this actually isn't a bad thing like it normally would be if you see one of your main characters just coughing blood out. You expect him to just drop down on the ground and pass out and for that to be it, but that would be really anticlimactic if that happened to Bakugo. So instead, of course, we have Horikoshi writing a situation where we see a small thread coming out of Bakugo's chest as he looks like he's in quite a bit of pain, honestly, or at least it probably feels really weird, and we find out that it's actually a tiny edge shot that comes out of Bakugo's chest, who says that he made Bakugo spit out some of the blood that had accumulated inside of his chest as he falls to the ground, because of course we remember that Edge Shot was supposed to pretty much give his life for this maneuver on Bakugo, but now that Edge Shot has pretty much used almost all of his body to heal up Bakugo as much as he can, what's gonna happen to Edge Shot, right? Like, is he gonna survive, or are we just gonna see a tiny Edge Shot for the rest of the series, as small as that is? Like, could Edge Shot just be chibi from now on until he somehow grows enough yarn, or I don't really know how that quirk works anymore, and I don't really think Horikoshi knows how it works anymore either, but yeah, Edge Shot survived. After Edge Shot collapses on the ground and looks like a little bloody worm just kind of laying on the ground, he says that he used his own body to mend the broken bones and injured organs, but Bakugo will continue to feel excruciating pain. And he says that right now, this is not an ideal body for fighting, but Bakugo says he knows that very well and still thanks his senpai for helping him to continue living as he smiles and puts his hand on his heart and looks like he's genuinely very thankful to Edge Shot, who I'm sure Bakugo is not going to forget. And I know a lot of fans have speculated that Bakugo is going to add some like Edge Shot related stuff to his costume based on a vision that we got from Endeavor when he was fighting against All For One, and I definitely think that this lends credence to that to a certain extent, because I don't know how many other pro heroes have ever stuck their neck out for Bakugo in the way that Edge Shot did here. I'm sure only Best Genius, All Might, and Edge Shot come to mind in Bakugo's heart. The issue is that the entire time that Edge Shot was trying to heal Bakugo, he was working really hard trying to do this as fast as he possibly could to save the boy's life, but Bakugo's heart had completely stopped at that point, and Edge Shot wasn't entirely sure how he was going to get the heart pumping again. And we know that Edge Shot did go in there with the idea of starting Bakugo's heart, so he probably was going to squeeze it or do something like that at the end of his whole healing process, but I also do think that it's really crazy that the last thing that Edge Shot was going to do was restart Bakugo's heart, but I guess that did save him from all the pain of Edge Shot piercing around through his insides to try to suture all of his wounds up. And it's at this point where Edge Shot explains that he was so exhausted that he didn't think he'd be able to get to Bakugo's heart in time. However, it wasn't actually him that brought Bakugo back to life, and somehow Bakugo managed to do this entirely on his own. With Edge Shot saying that after repairing Bakugo's body, he saw a single drop of sweat run through Bakugo's bloodstream and explode inside of him, activating his heart. And as ridiculous as this sounds, as little sense as this actually makes, we're just gonna accept it because we're at the end of the series, with Edge Shot saying, "I only connected the parts in place. It was the quirk you strengthened over the years that brought you back." And Bakugo then starts walking and asking, who the hell is that glowing child? Because he only assumed that it was All For One and actually has no idea who that is based on this situation and how everything has unfolded in the couple of seconds that he's been awake. From this point, All Might confirms that it is indeed All For One, and he asks Bakugo to come closer since he can't move due to Stain's quirk. And it's at this point where Bakugo turns around and reaches his arm towards All Might, and it's actually the arm that we saw Shigaraki completely destroy during their fight that hasn't really been working all that well since Bakugo woke up, because there are literally bones and all sorts of stuff sticking out of it. However, in this moment, we see All Might actually grab Bakugo by the wrist as the one remaining gauntlet from All Might's suit of armor that was still on All Might's arm transfers over to Bakugo, with All Might telling Bakugo that it's broken, but it'll at least serve as a splint for his arm so he can more or less use it. And he also tells Bakugo, "I call this gauntlet Gray Explosion Murder God Dynamite," and he gives him the support item, causing Bakugo to smile because All Might used his silly hero name. But the smile battles are over because we finally cut over to All For One, really enraged at the fact that Bakugo just saved All Might. But as much as I'm sure that All For One wants to fly over to Bakugo and literally rip him limb from limb before he does the same thing to All Might's body, he looks at Bakugo and realizes that this is all just a big waste of time, and he needs to transfer the copy of his quirk to Tamura, but anger is taking over and making him irrational. He spins and looks towards Shigaraki, looking away from Bakugo like, alright, I'm gonna get out of here, this guy's a loser, he's really not worth my time, I have one goal here that I need to complete, so I need to get over to Deku and Shigaraki's area. And as All For One turns around, he thinks about all the different people that have wasted his time or made things difficult here. He thinks of all the different people that fought Shigaraki, showing that he does have some sort of conscious link between the him inside of Shigaraki and his normal self, and he remembers all the battles that have happened in this arc so far between characters like Genist, Edgeshot, the Big Three, Endeavor, Hawks, Jiro, Tokoyami, Kami, Inasa, Makia, Mount Lady, Mineta, All Might, everyone, just everyone that has gotten out of the way during this arc. And at that exact moment, All For One says the wind should be blowing my way. I should be winning this. I'm the final boss. But it's at that moment that Bakugo then appears right next to him and shouts, I'm your final boss, and unleashes a giant explosion right in All For One's face, with All For One remembering the second One For All user again, because of course the second One For All user was the last person that All For One didn't expect to get in his way, that was able to get in his way to this degree. And it's also very likely that Bakugo is related to the second user because of their striking resemblance that isn't one-to-one enough for him to be some sort of weird time traveler or anything like that in those weird theories, but does make sense enough for this to work. So as Bakugo screams to All For One that he's here to step in when Deku can't handle it all on his own, the chapter ends with a massive explosion and All For One getting sent flying towards the ground, with him probably losing a little more time as he has to heal from that, and Bakugo becoming All For One's final boss. So really good chapter of My Hero Academia this week. It was 15 pages long, and I really enjoyed it. I love seeing Bakugo in his bag. I love seeing All For One angry. I wasn't a huge fan of Edgeshot coming out of Bakugo's chest, honestly, but I guess if Edgeshot doesn't make it, that would make me a little happier, because I just feel like Edgeshot saving Bakugo's life. Yeah, I'm happy that it happened at this point, right, because we kind of have to just live with the decision, and I wasn't happy at the time, but I feel like if that's going to happen, at the very least, we have to lose Edgeshot, right? Like, if Edgeshot survives this and is just around, like, I really wouldn't like that all that much. So Edgeshot has to go. I really want to see what's going on with Deku and Shigaraki, since their entire fight has pretty much been off screen this entire time. But I gotta say that I'm not going to be mad if we spend a couple chapters between Bakugo and All For One, and in fact I do think that we will end up switching between both of the different fights as they go on, so stay tuned on this channel for more My Hero Academia.
Okay, this is sound very interesting to hear, because whatever I heard from this chapter is literally amazing. I'm like, okay, so Bakugo is alive, right? And he also is pretty much in bad shape, which is fine, but he also still wants to fight and help Deku out. Now he gets a new upgrade, and he used an explosion quirk on Off One's face and sent him flying to the ground. Now that happened, Bakugo get his moment. He really thinks he has what it takes to be Off One, and I'm like thinking, Bakugo, you may be alive, you may have this awesome quirk you have or equipment that you got from All Might, but will that be enough to stop All For One? I mean, do you have what it takes to defeat him? I mean, he's pretty much confident in the way he is right now, and as far as the bruises he's having, all the blood he's coughing up, and I don't know how much he could last in that pain. I mean, he literally wants All For One, gone. So as far as that, I think he's just paying the price of what happened in season 3, because he couldn't do anything because he got kidnapped, and he let All Might's power going away because of that. But he has to go in this moment. He's going to do something about it, and I hopefully it'll be enough time for him to keep All For One attentionable, so he won't disrupt Deku's fight, because Deku needs to focus on his fight, so Bakugo will focus on his. But until then, I mean, this chapter is just unbelievable. I mean, I'm actually impressed the way Bakugo is, and I'm glad he's alive, even though I never really liked him at first in the beginning of the series, but I actually like him a little bit, even the slightest. So, it seems to me that we're not on break on this chapter, so we're probably just going to have to wait next weekend to see what happens next on the next chapter of 406. So hopefully, Deku can actually take out Shigaraki once Shigaraki's gone. And probably much Deku's going to jump in and help out and tag team with Bakugo so they can take out All For One. And hopefully that'll pretty much happen because I'm looking forward to that because that moment right there when they had to fight on 9 in My Hero Academia movie 2, where they had to, combine All on One for All together to take down their opponents. I can't wait for that to happen the same way to All For One because obviously they got to do that again because I'm really pumped up to see them tag team again in this chapter. Looking forward to it. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys liked what you saw. If you did, leave a like. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to me and hit that notification so you won't miss a thing. This is Shotway48 saying so long and peace out.